the board chair for the WCTC Board of Trustees, and this is our October 28, 2020 board retreat at the Waukesha County Technical College. And welcome everybody this evening, and thank you for your attendance. We've got a few people on, so we can start off this evening calling the meeting to order. And Jennifer, if you can walk us through the protocol.
So navigating our meeting tonight, most of us are in person, but for those that are virtual, your microphones are muted. So unmute them when you want to talk regarding that to the board members. And then we'll just do a real quick introduction of board members because we have some public on the Zoom meeting. And we'll start with Chairperson Lancaster.
David Lancaster, Chairperson.
Courtney Bauer.
Courtney Bauer, Vice Chair.
Michael Weeb.
Michael Weeb, Secretary and Treasurer.
Brian Baumgartner.
Brian Baumgartner,
Joe Garza.
board member.
Joe Garza, board member.
Alan Karch.
Alan Karch, board member.
Tom Mahalski.
Tom Mahalski, board member.
Katie Pansloff.
Katie Ponsloff, board member.
And Julie Valadez. Julie Valadez, board member.
Thank you, Jennifer. Again, thanks everybody for being here this evening. Certainly if the 2020 is anything, it is the year of surprises and the year of adaptability. We're very excited about our meeting this evening. I do want to inform everybody up front that we were quite excited about the individual that we had invited in to help facilitate our discussion this evening on DEI, working with our team here locally. And unfortunately, she has had a family emergency that has detained her, and she will not be able to attend this evening. So thankfully, Kaylin and Angela, Sherry and Ann have done yeoman's work today. I think we can only imagine scrambling to make sure that tonight's conversation and discussion didn't miss a beat, and I'm confident that that's going to happen. So thank you guys for digging deep and reacting on the fly, and we'll work through that, and we certainly wish her family member good health and to get back in speed. So thank you guys very, very much for that. So with that said, I am going to turn this over. Our first topic this evening is diversity, equity, and inclusion at WCTC, engagement, outcomes, and emerging themes for the WCTC Board of Trustees. So, Kaylin, if you could get us started, and we'll look forward to a good discussion this evening.
Thank you. Well, we're going to kick this off, and I do want to indicate Gail's apologies for her absence tonight. I'm probably a poor substitute, and know that my tenure is short here, and starting this off, I'm doing it and knowing that the new president will be the one that's really going to lay a lot of the groundwork for you to work. But I have a lot of information from the president's meeting last week where it was all on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the things that are being done at the state level, things that are being done with the committees that they have formed. And Sherry, obviously, as our Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Compliance Officer, Chief, it's a mouthful, it will actually really take this role to the next level in this organization. So bear with me. I'm just going to start out. Kristen, if you could advance the slide. This is just a quick agenda for tonight of what Sherry and I are going to cover. Really just highlighting, why DEI is important to the WCTC board, and I know it's always been important to the board and to WCTC, but now it's come to really a different level of how we need to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organizations at the state level, And many things are being done to enhance that and to continually improve on that area. Definitions of DEI, just so that we're getting everybody on the same page. This is a lot about alignment because the state definitions and the committee definitions and our own definitions that Sherry has developed with the team and with the state are all aligned. The other area is the WCTCS, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, that is made up of representatives from all the technical colleges, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Specific activities occurring throughout the WTCS regarding DEI, highlight some of those. The WTCS DEI committee activities that I can only suggest for you as a board, and I know that that is my place, to give you some ideas of how you as a board going forward can look at these things. And WTCS, the President's Association's commitment that we did back in May to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sparked off a lot of these things. Next slide, please. So first, the question that we ask, and that Gail, we're here tonight, would ask is the why. So why is WCTC committed to intentionally constructing an inclusive, diverse, and equitable campus? The first reason is that it's the right thing to do. The second reason is that now more than ever, we need to look at the programs and how they're integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into their curriculum, how we as a college are ensuring that the gaps that are between our majority and minority students are being lessened. And diversity includes more than that. It's our handicapped students, it's our LGBTQ students. And we need to start looking at metrics and information that can help us be a better college and helping them be successful, helping students be successful. And not only students, but our employees from a diverse background as well. As I've said, WCTC, it's not like we haven't been doing anything, but this year it has brought many things to light and many conversations that need to occur. And the fact is that we need to do better. And the only way that we can do better is to be able to share with each other and to build on what we already know and make things much better. So that's the why. Next slide, please.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about how we developed our definitions that are aligned with what the WTCS system is using, but wanted to give you a visual of what, when we talk about equality and equity and justice, what that really means. So if you look at the diagram, you'll see on the left-hand side equality, and that's when everybody that's looking at the game, they have the same step that they need to be able to see the game. But as you can see, there's one person who actually can't see because his step is a little bit lower. Equity in the middle is when everyone gets the support that they need. So in order for the guy in the yellow pants to see the game, he gets an additional step, but that step was taken away from somebody that's tall enough to be able to see over the fence. And then if you look at the third picture, justice, all three can see the game without supports or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. And that inequity was the board that was covering the fence, allowing them to be able to see the game. So that is one of the things that we're working towards here at WCTC, is to make sure that all students, whether it's removing a step, adding a step, or removing the fence or the board altogether, for them to be able to have an equitable and inclusive education here at WCTC. Next slide. And so the definitions that we use, again, are the ones that are aligned with WTCS and approved by the DEI committee here. Diversity. Diversity encompasses an array of experiences, including, but not limited to, age, race, ethnicity, gender, religion, disabilities, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin. And our appreciative awareness of diversity provides the foundation for the understanding that individuals are shaped by this array of experiences. Equity refers to the intentional practice of identifying the unique needs within our diverse student and employee populations, and in turn, providing the support necessary for each individual to succeed in their academic and career goals. And then inclusion. It's the degree to which all individuals in a community are welcomed, valued, respected, heard, and able to participate.
Next slide, please. So this is the what. And the quote on the side is WCTC leaders will model, leaders go first in creating a welcoming campus culture. And, you know, when we're talking with the board tonight, and you're talking about the role the board has in DEI, it really needs to be something that we start here tonight, and we're starting at a very, I would say, strategic level. And when your new president gets here, you'll have to continue these conversations and different activities that inform you as a board on DEI and strengthen, because just you tonight having this conversation sends a very loud message to the college about how important you feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion at the college. Then the question becomes, and again, that would be your next step, is how are you going to measure that? How are you going to look at that? What information do you need to know as what we're doing as a college, and to improve those equity gaps and improve our employees of diverse backgrounds, and also how we're recruiting more of our employees into these positions. So the what for tonight is really the board asking themselves and saying, you know, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to me? And what can I share with the college in things that I have an expectation for as I've set or as I have learned things about DEI? And really, your work will begin again after you get a new president. Next, please. Kristen? Okay, it is. The how. Creating inclusive community college communities requires intentional action to address historical underrepresentation and exclusion with respect to academic career success, hiring, promotion, leadership, campus climate, curriculum, and access to resources. So there's a lot there of things that as a college, again, not that we haven't been doing them, but I think we need to do them at a greater level and with a greater intentionality, as the slide says. The board, in return, really has to not only set the example about DEI, but also holds the college to ensuring that these things happen. And that's really pivotal in the discussion of DEI. I will tell you that from the president's meeting last week, all colleges are having these discussions with their boards. All are starting from a different place. And all will be going in a different direction in their conversations. But as I learned a long time ago when we were doing student outcome assessment for the first time, and the accreditors from the Higher Learning Commission down in Chicago, and the difficultness of measuring student outcomes was continuing to come up. About how do you do this? How do you do this? That the accreditor, Steve Spangel, at the time, and Anna's shaking her head because she knew Steve well, said sometimes it's not so much that you're trying to find that perfect outcome. It's the fact that you're having the conversation. And that's what we also around here have to do as a college, is have the conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you as a board, again, set that example. And I'm so proud that you're doing this as a retreat. Because not only, as I said, it's the right thing to do, but it's the right thing moving forward for this organization. We have a lot to do. There's more things that our state office can do for us in providing information and guidance. And there is a plethora of experience out there in each of these colleges in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we need to tap into that more. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about alignment, because sometimes we have to look for the big picture of where DEI is at this point, what's happening. Because there's a lot that has been happening since when I promoted Sherry to the Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Compliance position in the spring of 2020. And when I did that, there was a point in time in the year of 2020 that there has been a lot of questions about the value of individuals, what we're doing for students and student gaps, especially minority student gaps in achievement, graduation, completion. That conversation has been happening at every college and university in the state. And that focus is going on that. And in bringing Sherry to the PEC, and she still reports to Angela and Dave, Dave on the employee side and Angela on the student services side. But bringing her to the President's Executive Council table also has her providing to us her insight as an expert in DEI. And she challenges us to think differently as well about things and say, hey, when we're making decisions, did you think about this? Or maybe we need to look at improving this. And that perspective has added great value to the PEC. So I want to thank her for really not agreeing. I kind of just told you. But a good choice of that. So as I said, she's also working on the 30, 60, 90-day Tiger team. She has a DEI committee. I feel like I'm speaking for you here. A DEI committee and working on a 30, 60, 90-day plan that I asked her to do when she started as a member of the PEC and was promoted to the position that she has. She also has another DEI committee as well. So the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day is a tiger team. And what we call tiger teams, if you haven't heard that before, is a team that comes in and makes quick and effective changes to processes or plans or things that we're doing that sometimes are those things that we put, like she explained, the boards in place instead of maybe the fence. And that can be easily removed from the DEI committee's suggestions and perspectives, and of course from her own perspectives. Mentioned that. And WCTC has devoted time and resources to DEI. And now DEI, as I said, more than once probably already, is that we need to commit more time and resources to the success of our employees, our future employees, and our students, to be better looking at where those gaps are and putting those resources in order to close those gaps. Next.
So here are some examples of ways that we've embraced diversity and inclusion here on campus. We have a multicultural resource center that is ran by Rolando De Leon, who's the diversity coordinator, where there are resources that there are students, any student actually can go in and get some resources from him. And we support our students, and we have a multicultural resource center specialist who is somebody that works specifically with a group of students that are in the multicultural student mentorship program to make sure that their GPA stays the same level, giving them access to, like they get access to their progress reports and have those conversations if students are kind of falling behind. So we do provide that type of support to not only our multicultural resource center students, but to all students through the Navigator process as well. We have campus clubs and organizations that are dedicated for students. For students, for instance, we have a SAFE Club, which is the Students Alliance Group for Equality, where again, any student can partake in and be involved in any issues that are involving LGBTQIA plus individuals. There is a Multicultural Student Union, which is made up of just the various ethnicities that we have on campus. And then we just created, I'm very excited, our first employee alliance group, which is called the Employees of Color Resource Alliance Group, where it's employees of color getting together to provide support to each other, but also to our students. Speakers in professional development, we have had the past 2 in-services dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then Rolando, on a monthly basis, will do some programming out of his office. Lately, they've been on Zoom, and they've been highly attended. That range from, again, LGBTQIA issues to women history issues. So just making sure that we're encompassing and being inclusive with all types of issues that we talk about. And then lastly, posters and campus signage. So on any given month, you can come and look at the stairs that are going up to the 2nd floor if you're in the C building. And there are different signs that talk about whatever month we're celebrating. So if you come in February, you're going to see 40 different posters that are dedicated to 40 Black history people that have done a lot in the Black history community. For Latino Heritage Month, you'll see the same thing with Latinx individuals who have contributed to that community and so forth. So we do want to make sure that we're advertising and celebrating the differences that people do bring to not only WCTC, but to the world. Next. So we're going to get you involved here for just a second. So we're going to do a pair share activity. And so we just went over the examples that we do here at WCTC that gets people involved in embracing DEI. And so we want to know what you as a board, what initiatives or what ideas that you have that you would give to us. So in just a second, we're going to ask you to just think to yourself and write down 3 to 5 ideas that you have that you think, again, ways that we can embrace DEI here on campus. And then we're going to ask you to pair next to your neighbor. And you are going to talk with your neighbor for about 5 minutes and take your 3 to 5 and just come up with 1 or 2 that you're going to be willing to share with the rest of us. So the individuals that are on Zoom that are part of the board, you will go into a breakout room and you will be able to do this and then you'll report out to us as well. So we'll just take a couple minutes again for you to just think about 3 to 5 and then in about 2 or 3 minutes, we'll have you pair with someone else.
If you'd like to get up and stretch your legs. Somebody, those of you at home, stretch your legs.
haven't already, if you can just pair with the board member sitting next to you, and then just look for if you pair together. So it's not time. So, to start talking about, being ready to share.
Yeah, well, in the spirit of.
Help join our team.
Okay.
We have a 1 minute warning to where people want, and she's carrying a gun tonight, that's really good for me to say. Sorry.
No longer. Now you can't see it, so they're not there. Yeah. Someone's got sticky fingers over there. Oh. No.
We're having snacks. There's extras over there.
I will let her know we're ready. Let me make sure she's closing it. Yeah, I don't know.
Katie, you will?
Yes.
All right, so everybody ready to give their one or two that they've come up with as a team? Not everybody jump up to go first. Don't forget we have the. Okay, all right. Is there a team that would like to go first? Yes, we will.
We unanimously selected Courtney as our spokesperson.
Hi, everyone. So our group came up with a few ideas here, beginning with yearly DEI training. I put training in quotes because something like this, just to kind of keep us up to date, and just that constant reminder that this is something we should be supporting and quite honestly, making ourselves more professional. Possibly a presentation from Rolando, different positive things. He's kind of got his finger on the pulse of things that are going on around campus, and I think, though we don't want to micromanage it all, it'd be kind of nice to know what the concerns or what students think are going positively on campus. Again, perception's reality, so just what they see. And in that, that's essentially measuring the success of the current initiatives. I think that would kind of help us gauge how things are going. Possibly board members showing support by attending DEI events on campus, and just kind of seeing what those are all about. And then using
Are you looking at me?
Well, the others are.
Actually, I took two of Julie's and I combined them into one. That is as part of the board's DEI strategic plan, we should set measurable goals that we could look at and see progress hopefully over time.
we talked about, we're looking at some of this might be happening at the state level. State set some of the requirements for the board makeup, but what we consider for making sure that the board has diverse members of the board itself.
people on the Zoom can't hear you.
Let me turn this on. Sorry, Julie. You had such a quiet voice. Sorry. On the bottom. There's usually a power button, but I don't see one. Just found it. Just a
So we were also discussing how some of these, again, conversations, as you already mentioned, are happening at the state level and state set some of these, but as far as looking at the actual makeup of the board and what kind of diverse representation we can be sure is actually part of the board makeup. The other ones were already mentioned. We have, as a board, looking at the board specific, we have one hire. So in that process, making sure that we have a DEI strategy for that process.
Thank you. And then our last group, that was via Zoom.
I just want to point out that I'm having a very difficult time hearing. I'm seeing a lot of nods from the others that are attending via Zoom. So we'd respectfully request, either speaking louder or speaking closer to the microphone. I know it's hard with the masks, so I can appreciate that. But I'm sure a lot of great, not that we have to repeat what was said, but I did get most of it, but just it's very difficult to hear.
Joe, thanks for calling it to our attention. We just activated the mic here on Julie's last comment, so we'll try to make sure we're getting the mic used all the time. Thanks for letting us know.
So I apologize if this has been said. I too was having a hard time hearing, but we brought up more frequent report outs about the progress that we're making with the DE&I initiatives, including the specific tactics that have been put into place in order to help us meet those initiatives. We also talked about, as a board, supporting, education for all individuals who are in any sort of leadership role or educator role, to go through an unconscious bias training to ensure that when we are accepting, and doing all this to recruit diverse educators or diverse students, that the culture doesn't reject them because they don't feel like their differences are celebrated or their opinions and ideas are heard.
Okay, very good, thank you. Can you all hear me better now? Is that better? Okay, got a thumbs up, thank you. Well, I'll tell you that you all get an A because most of the things that you brought up as a board are things that at the state level are being looked at, being implemented, and in the future will be implemented. As you know, none of these things are going to happen overnight. Some of these things take longer time than others do. So thanks, Yuri, for doing that. So I'm really happy. Could you go to the next screen, please, Kristen? Thank you. So the President's Association actually back in May had a very large discussion about diversity, equity, inclusion at the president's level. And these things will carry forward into the coming years, actually, and your new president will be working with the other presidents in how they're measuring these and how they're setting the tone for the entire system. But as you can look there, we have developed things that we feel are important to the system and to the president's group as well. And again, many of these you have brought up or identified in some of your comments. Sustained conversations on systematic racism and policy reform, a focus on equity and student access and success. I think that goes to Katie's comment about supporting education for all students, using data to close equity gaps. And that is one area that, as a state office, they are looking to collect and breaking down some of the data that we report on a regular basis to get more, I would say, specific information on how students are achieving. Reviewing hiring and retention policies at your college, and increasing transparency around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So those were the 5 areas that the President's Association identified. And we'll, like I said, those are the goals that have been set by them, but we'll also be going forward as they continue to make this, as part of the President's meeting, a major topic of our discussions. Next slide, please. So the next is I wanted to share with you, and some of this is just from next week or last week at our President's meeting. We spent the entire afternoon on diversity, equity, inclusion, and specifically hearing from the DEI statewide group on the activities that they're looking to implement, and working with all of the districts in doing that. And there are parts that are for the boards as well. So to start out with, just so everyone is aware, that the technical college system, the state system, has to submit to the governor by the end of this year a plan for DEI as a technical college system. So they are working on that as a staff. I look a lot with alignment on things and how do these align all the way down into each of our college. There was a new WTCS DEI committee that was formed. Sherry served on several of the DEI committees, but they have really broadened it. And there are anywhere from 1 to 9 representatives from each district on the DEI committee. And from WCTC, you can see our representatives noted. So you have Sherry, Rolando, Dennis, and Karina. So they will be going to many meetings, probably via Zoom for a while, but at the state office, and looking at how they're going to be implementing these activities. And I'm going to share some of them with you. Next one, please. Slide, please. Kristen, next slide. She did. Sometimes you can't tell with the blue when they advance these, so. So the DEI committee actually presented to the presidents what they had developed as action plans for all of the districts and things that they wanted to see moving forward. They really focused on 3 areas: collaboration and innovation, professional development, and system-wide advocacy. And under each one of those, they were looking at specific things that they looked at other committees to also help in this effort. And they made that really clear across all of the different committees that are state committees. Brad has the ISAs, the instructional services. Administrators? I was going to say managers. Angela has the student service administrators, Dave does HR, Jane is the CFOs, it goes down the line. There are many state committees. And one of the things that they're looking through is also how do those committees continue to promote in their activities DEI types of actions. So they are looking to facilitate system-wide DEI events. And again, not looking at this just as from one school doing something, but maybe sharing at a larger level and doing something at a much grander level. Support system-wide equity goals. Their equity report that is required by the state office is going to be entirely redone and with a lot more data and information about, again, DEI initiatives and the data that supports how well institutions are doing with closing those gaps and employee recruitment and retention. They are going to be looking to the HR committee and looking at their practices. I think they've already have been talking with them. And then they're going to be laying out and developing best practices and having resources available for all of the colleges. So it does make sense on a very macro level to share all the things and the best practices that are working for maybe a college that is doing things to address the equity gap or the achievement gap. Maybe Gateway is doing something that is innovative that we could use. So really broadening this out, and we sure have a lot of good things that we can share from WCTC. Sherry mentioned the mentoring program. Many of our staff here serve as a mentor to a student and meet with them and do everything from academics to maybe just being a good support person for them as they traverse their educational path at WCTC. Professional development, really looking at some of the legislation and laws that have come about regarding student employee issues. And then again, as I mentioned this, the DEI initiatives for employees and students. And they work on system-wide advocacy as well. Those are their main areas that they talked about. But if we really get into some specific activities, next slide. This is I just picked from their plan some of the things that I thought would be interesting to you as a board. Implicit bias interview and hiring practice training. Katie mentioned that. That is going to be something that they have recommended and will be doing across all of the campuses. They are using the Articulate IT platform for housing interview bias resources for all of the colleges. The equity report improvements that will be made at the state office level in cooperation with the DEI committee. They are looking at 8 to 10 work groups in addition to the DEI committee that are specifically focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion for students, employees, institutional equity goals, and overall data. They're looking at having, well, like just this microphone up here. Well, I just went dead.
Get closer to the owl device.
Yeah, you can get close to the owl or you can use this microphone.
Yeah, it's just I don't want to have back to people.
No, you're fine.
So I'm moving up a little closer, people that are on Zoom, to our what's called our owl device. Can you hear me? Is that okay? Thank you.
That is much better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll stand right next to the owl here. They are also interested in looking at having exit interviews with employees and developing a database on why individuals tend to leave an institution and look for themes that may be happening in those exit interviews. They are looking to offer a WCTC Professional Development DEI Training Certificate for staff, faculty, employees that really demonstrate their knowledge of DEI and the types of activities that we need to do to support students and employees. More engagement of student voices and DEI programming across the campuses. This is one that the state office, and actually Sherry is just started working with. They are going to take a look at all of the programs that we offer and do an analysis of the curriculum and looking at how diversity, equity, inclusion are integrated into the curriculum. And one of the areas that they started with was police science. Jody Crozier, who is our law enforcement coordinator, and Sherry has served on a group working with the state office. And they will be taking some of those recommendations and integrating them into their curriculum. And that will be a big effort because, as you know, we offer many programs here at WCTC. And so taking a look at those across the entire college campuses will be a big undertaking, but a very important one. And then climate surveys, specifically focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion for students and staff. And really getting to, I think as Courtney mentioned, hearing from Rolando about what are some of the student issues or barriers or successes that they are encountering when they come here to WCTC. So that is just a smidgen of some of the specific activities that I thought would be of interest to you as a board that are happening as the DEI committee continues to roll out their plan. Next slide, Kristen. Okay, I just thought the cow was cute. And sometimes we do feel like we're laying on the middle of that strip. I think. But I think the quote is just as cute as we need to talk about the things that get in the way, not just the how-to. So those are those things that I talked about, those conversations. Those, and sometimes difficult conversations to have. Next slide, Kristen. So that DEI State Committee also looked at things for district boards. And they are looking at having a training platform on DEI for the district boards. And I would say, and this is my opinion, is that the District Boards Association will be offering many of that through their activities as local training and development as you as a board continue down this path. They want to discuss local board member application processes in order to ensure that colleges' DEI perspectives are represented. Julie, I think you entered in that. It's how we go about when you're appointed to the board. That's actually how that's all done is a state statute that identifies that, but they want to look into maybe some similarities across different districts and how the recruitment is done for that, etc. And then this one probably might throw you all, is develop a system-wide guidance for creating land acknowledgements. And that is actually that areas where technical colleges, campuses, the land that they are built on, that it is recognized of the particular American Indian group that that land might have belonged to. So in our case, it might be the Potawatomi, and having some type of designation or a sign in the lobbies and just acknowledging the Native American connection of the land to our institution. Next slide, please, Kristen. And these are just suggestions only from an outgoing president. And your new president will need to work with the board. But as I was thinking about it, I was trying to think, how would the board, want to monitor or want to get involved in or, not get down in the weeds as we've talked about, but at an operational level, continue to put an emphasis on how well the college is doing at the EI. And again, just suggestions. What you're doing tonight is, even though it might not be getting down into the things that way down, it is a really pivotal moment for the college to know that the board is taking an interest in this and wants to know more and build further on it. Your strategic plan. There's ways to do that as a single standing strategic directive, or it can be threaded through. I just looked through our strategic plan today and I could identify metrics for each one of them, from how much financial aid is provided to our diverse student population. Are we doing a good job of communicating the financial aid that is available? Having student focus groups to ask that. That could be in resource stewardship. So, those are just some things that off the top of my head. Reports to the board on DEI metrics. Courtney, I think your team mentioned that as well. The affirmative action report that you receive every year. The equity reports that will, again, be changing, I think, drastically. Just diverse student population information. And where does WCTC set in regards to our minority students on campus? Presentation on WCTC initiatives to address DEI gaps. So it's one thing to identify a gap, it's another thing to do something about it. And then measuring if that has been successful or what changes that need to be made to that. Efforts to close gaps in DEI for employees as well as students. A culture survey of just our students and our diverse staff, and maybe plans of action regarding the information that is collected through that. And then just the board as a whole, just attending DEI events that are held on campus would, again, shows your support of DEI initiatives. And again, you're noticed when you walk in the room at WCTC. Hopefully the day we can walk into the room. But they do notice it when you're on Zoom as well. So with that, I turn to my comrade in arms. Any closing remarks that you would like to make?
No, so we really appreciated the ideas that you have given to us, and definitely we will take that into consideration and know that within the 30, 60, 90-day plan, a lot of the strategies and the events that are going on a system level, we will be having here at WCTC. So we are really making sure that what we do aligns with what the system is doing. So, but thank you for your time. Did we want to close with the last question or?
Yeah, the last question, please. It's just a plus delta. Oh, could you go back to that? There you go. Is there anything that you would like to share specifically, with Sherry, about as we went through this, maybe what resonated with you or what was particularly helpful in knowing? Or on the opposite side, what do you want to follow up on? Or what would you like? Sorry, I walked away from the owl. So we were asking about, the positives and things that resonated maybe in today in our presentation to you and things that you heard, and to just providing us feedback, both positive and negative, or let's say areas to improve upon that you would like to see in the future. This will be you working with your new president in the next iterations and things that you want to see in DEI.
I've got something. I was happy to hear your report on the initiatives that the WCTS is taking, and they're kind of leading the way, and look forward as a board member to partnering with them and learning from them ways that we can improve and enhance our current efforts.
Okay. Did everybody online hear him, or would you like me to ask for Alan to repeat himself?
Are you kidding me?
Looks like
Hey,
Brian.
Joe, did you hear that?
Yeah, we got a thumbs up.
Yes, I did.
Big mouth coming out.
I was just ensuring.
So first of all, thank you guys very, very much. It's not easy to do when you gotta rally around like that quick. Couple things. First of all, Sherry, I like the fact when I agree with Alan. I think seeing some of the breadth of stuff that's going on is helpful for all of us. You know, never assume that we know all that. I mean, it really, really was helpful to see it in print.
Yeah, David, you might want to do something.
It was really helpful, I think, to see it in print and to try to give us some scale and perspective on all the things that are going on. And as some of the comments were made, the opportunity to continue to see progress is going to be really, really special, I think. So thank you for that. One of the things that struck me in looking at this was, you had information on the president's group, you had information from the technical college system. I can't wait to hear the information on our own team. And it really is, I mean, this is a big job, and you guys have to get your arms around this, and we're going to help you do that. But I also would encourage you to make sure that we're keeping that local WCTC flavor in that and approach as well. But it is pretty significant when you see it all put up like that. And as I was looking at it, there were some things that were aligning very well, and there were other things that were coming out of different groups. So we'll have to figure out how to basically divide and conquer those over time. So it's a big job, but I know you're up to it. So no pressure at all.
I just will say very quickly, so at in November's board meeting, you will hear the 30, 60, 90-day plan. We're actually in the last stages of finalizing that. So you will get an idea of what we will be doing. And again, seeing how the initiatives of the WTCS system is aligning with what we're doing as well. So you will get to see that next month.
Can't wait.
Anything from our Zoom? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
Thank you. Yeah, echoing again, just appreciation for the presentation and all the work you guys did to put that together and the work that you're doing. As representative of the presentation, want to acknowledge that. We answered one of my questions. And a couple just quick questions. When it mentioned the some of the resources from the state level, like bias resources, for example, are those things that they're still developing, or are those things that are already ready?
Good question. So actually, I am a part of the team at the WTCS level that's developing the bias and interviewing training. We have one last meeting to finalize it, and then we are hoping to ship that out January 1st to all of the systems. So we are purchasing an articulate system to make sure that we can house it, but yeah, that is ready to go January 1st.
Okay, thank you. And it also mentioned exit surveys. I was curious, is that something that we currently have, or is that something that we'll be looking at?
I see Dave Brown nodding, so that's a yes, we are doing.
We currently have, we currently have exit surveys and or exit interviews.
Might want to use the other one, Dave. Yes.
Sure. We currently offer exit interviews or surveys to our exiting employees. I think what Sherry's really talking and Kaylin spoke to is that we'll be compiling that data on a system-wide basis as it relates to the DEI initiative.
Thank you. And then my last comments were just wanting to, on the left side, just acknowledging the student voice And we mentioned like hearing from Orlando, but in general, also hearing from the actual students, I think would be something to think about. Another area, just in general, in this topic would be the reporting. So while we have great goals, when like the cow on the road, when the things that are getting in the way, reporting is kind of one of those topics. So what does that look like, and how is that effective? And then how are we engaging the community in that? Is that part of it? And then looking at things like Hispanic serving institution and some of those other kind of opportunities that are out there for institutions to look at, even grants opportunities for things like that. Those are just kind of some of the general comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin, can I just respond? I won't need the microphone. I can't sing or dance, but I have a loud voice. For the students, you'll see in the next board agenda item, our next board meeting, we are going to have the SGA, the president of SGA, come and do a presentation. And I thought it was very important. I'm glad that I heard that from multiple people, that we want to hear what students have to say. It's good that you get it from us, but wouldn't it be nice that you could ask students direct questions? And so they will be a part of the next meeting. But I do think that there is some value. There is a multicultural resource board, and there is some value in maybe they partner SGA and then this board so that you can get both sides of the coin. The other thing I will tell you is that we're working on retention efforts, and not only doing exit surveys of staff who leave, but we want to create something, an exit survey for students who leave as well. You know, not just for diverse populations, but for all students, because then that helps us build a better intervention strategy to support those students. So I heard that, and I just wanted to say that those are some of the things that we're working on over in student services.
And we've also invited 2 students to sit on our DEI committee. That's not the Tiger team, that's something separate, to be that student voice to help us, like, you know, figure out and plan what we can do not only from the employee side, but the student side as well.
So our panelists Zooming with us, do you have any positives or any suggestions for improvement?
Yeah, this is Katie. I was impressed with the robust nature of the plan. One question that I still have is, where is the accountability? Are there leadership goals built into making this progress, or how are we putting some, real teeth into incentivizing these goals to come to fruition?
That's a very good question. And Gail, who was to join us tonight, she's from Distr Education, and that Distr Education has been working with us. Are you familiar with them, Katie?
Oh yeah, Distr started as a healthcare initiative, so
Yes.
I know Distr very well. Yes.
Yes. And Gail and the Distr organization has been working with WCTC for 2 years on, specifically, we started out in employee engagement and looking at improving that overall employee engagement with each other, with their supervisors, where there are holes in leadership. They have conducted 2 surveys, and right now Gail actually worked with the PEC to look at the items that came to us that were areas that the staff recommended improvements on, and the PEC actually developing action plans of how they're going to address some of those improvement areas. They're the lower end scoring areas, the top box scores that are in the Distr Education guidelines that they do. But again, the other area is that they're looking at is how can this be integrated into performance evaluations? And that will be something that, as they are rolling out a new performance evaluation plan, I believe, am I correct, Dave? Yes. That will be a component of that. How that looks, I can't tell you, but the other part of the accountability, I think, is where you're going to see it is in some of those equity reports. And as the state is having us do a much, I say, in-depth dive into how well our diverse students are doing academically, and then what are we doing to, what initiatives are we doing to help with those achievement gaps? And, that's on us to make sure that we are doing everything that we can in order for student success. And the same thing, I think, with employees. If there's things that we need to do for employees, that will also be something that from a manager level will lead to accountability. And from a faculty level, the whole program review process of looking at how DEI is threaded into the curriculum and the feedback from students. Students are not afraid to share and tell you where there needs to be improvement. So
Thank you.
That.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your patience. I think your part 2 of all of this under your new presidential leadership will really dig deeper in. I hope tonight was just a nice little dusting of snow. Well, maybe I should have said that. I probably cursed with that. But just to get a broad view of what is happening to help inform you from a state level and from what's been happening at the college. So I see Joe. Joe, did you have any questions or comments or areas for improvement you would like to see? Okay, he's giving me a thumbs up or a good head shake. Thank you. So again, thank you very much. We worked our hardest to try to make this something that was valuable for you. And I hope you take some things away from it that you could build on in the future. So thank you.
Good job.
Sherry, thank you. Sherry forever. Only think, whoa.
Did you have Sherry? Did you have something? Oh.
I was just holding the golden leg to her because
Okay, thank you. Again, give it up for you two for calling the audible and doing the job you did. Thank you very, very much. We had talked about trying to have a bit more interactive board meetings, interactive retreat meetings. And hopefully this accomplished that. And certainly the topic was chosen by design. We have so much to learn and so much to gain, so much to lead when it comes to DEI. And one of the slides early on that caught me was, and one of the comments that Kaylin had made was, about our responsibility to demonstrate that leadership and then ultimately help hold the college accountable. So that falls on all of us, which is, I think, a very exciting opportunity for us. We have an excellent team. I am really excited, Sherry. I'd love to get a chance to see you up here in front and leading this. Thank you, sincerely. It's a big job, and we're here to help you with it. But help us learn, educate us, lead us, stand beside us. And then at the end of the day, we're all going to be working for the end result of the best interests of our kids and our students. So I'm excited about November. This was a step. November will be the next one, in a very long journey. But I'm excited about what we'll see from the DEI team. I'm certainly very, very excited about the role that the PEC will have with this, as well as the rest of the faculty and most certainly all of us as board members. So with that said, our opportunity is significant and it's very much ahead of us. So Thank you all very, very much. Do we need a bio break or should we just keep pushing through here? We okay?
I'll have a break. You don't mind? Well, you guys don't need me here.
Just please take 5 minutes if you need to, and then please try to be back in 5 because we want to try to stay on time. So 5 quick ones.
Good, I wondered if someone's good.
But you know, you find out in one page that, and that's what she wants to do, right, so, yeah. She did go, she did here. She will, yeah, she was.
Let me see all that. That's a lot of work. Okay.
I took his Kit Kat.
Did you take something?
I did.
You took a Kit Kat?
I did. You should just get online and tell them that you did.
Oh, he's not there anymore. What about Michael's?
When Michael was gonna.
Everybody being punctual. So we talked about, the first topic was designed to be interactive and certainly that's one step in a journey. The second one is much more operational. So we're going to see a really informative report here by Jane in regards to the enterprise account. So my guess is some of you aren't familiar exactly what that means and what it refers to. Jane's presentation does an excellent job of helping us understand that, and then to take a pretty close look at a couple that we need to take a good look at and figure out maybe some different ways to manage them. So Jane, fire away.
Thank you, David. Good evening. I'm hoping that this microphone works, and if it doesn't, you guys can speak up on Zoom. Oh, okay, I've got a thumbs up. Otherwise, if the batteries fail again, I'll stand up by the owl like Kaylin did, because it sounded like that worked as well. Good evening. So we are here for this part of the board retreat to talk a little bit about our enterprise fund financials. If you go to the next slide, Kristen, this is the definition, the actual internal definition of the enterprise funds, but what you need to know is just that they are run like small businesses within the college. So these small businesses support the students on their educational journey. Revenues and expenses are generated by the business activity, and their goal is to break even or generate some net income. Next slide. This is the list of the enterprise funds that exist within WCTC. And I will talk and speak to each one of them in the graphs that follow. Next slide. We're going to start with the bookstore. So the bookstore, as you can imagine, if you think back to your experiences in college, if you had them, the bookstore model is really changed over the years, and the margins are decreasing. They're changing from that model of selling that large textbook at a very generous margin to a model of digital access and electronic devices. It's a very different model than years ago, and the margins are different accordingly. The bookstore also purchases and owns its own assets. So the bookstore itself carries a significant balance of fixed assets and maintains financial responsibility for its space on campus. So that's why you see in 2017-18 on this graph, you see that there was a year of net loss. That was the year that the bookstore moved from the K building into our B building. So that move cost the bookstore the cost of buying new shelving, buying new assets for within the bookstore. And like I said, they're responsible and pay for their own space. So they paid for that remodel. It was a one-time deal, and it's what created that net loss in 2017-18. The bookstore transferred out $176,000 to aid the funding of their new space in that year. So if they hadn't moved and hadn't done that, they would have had the net income, that a little more of the net income we're used to seeing. They also transferred out $132,000 in the following year for the final payments for that move. So those affected those last 2 years. Next page. The Classic Room Restaurant. So prior to 2018, the staff that ran the Classic Room Restaurant were charged to the operational general funds of the college. As the restaurant was starting up and gearing up, that was the college supported and helped it in that manner. Starting in 2018, the staff costs were transferred from the general fund into the enterprise funds. So that's why you see a drop in 2017-18 to 18-19. The Classic Room Restaurant has been able, even now with funding its own staff, they have been breaking even or making that small income we're looking for. The next graph. Oh. Pardon? Oh, the Classic Room Restaurant is a restaurant that our students run here on campus. They run it like it's a restaurant downtown, only it's here on our campus, and it gives our students that real life experience of running a restaurant, being at the restaurant, cooking for it, and all that is entailed. So it's all of our enterprise businesses are in place for that instructional support element. So good question. Good question. David?
Gene, maybe just for the benefit of the group, just talk a little bit about, just from an expectation perspective, as we're kind of looking at the bars bouncing, how we view profit with regards to this, so that people kind of get a perspective on that.
So David asked how we view profit when we're looking at these enterprise funds. Their goal is to break even, and breaking even is good. Some net income is needed to sustain, it's like any small business, to sustain it in a year when there is a loss. So just like if you're running a small business outside of the college, you need to have some income and some reserve to help you weather those years when you have extra investment to make or extra expense for some reason. So the goal is to break even and make some net income to be able to be sustainable. And I was going to talk about it a little later, but I'll talk about it here. Historically, the bookstore has been the enterprise fund that made enough money to support the others when they had bad years. So historically here at WCTC, the bookstore had enough margin and made enough net income each year that it could cover the expenses of all of the other enterprise funds. In today's model, that bookstore net income isn't what it used to be, and they just can't afford to continue to subsidize the others at the level they have been. So we've been working very hard to have each enterprise fund itself break even, but they can help and support each other financially. They are rolled up all in one set of enterprise funds, and so they can help each other out like that. But the bookstore just isn't able to help out to the level that it has in the past.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Okay, great. So we're on customer assistance auto shop. So this, prior to 2019-20, this enterprise fund included both the body shop and the auto repair and maintenance. So in the loss that you see in 2018-19 was due to the discontinuance of the body shop portion. So it is continuing now only as auto repair and maintenance. There were extensive expenses incurred when they closed up the auto body. There was remediation and cleanup for the leased site. We were leasing a Sky Plaza location, and that is now closed. We're no longer leasing it, but there were expenses in closing that up and remediating that property. So that's the loss you see in 2018-19. That's not something we expect to see going into the future. That was a one-year loss. Next slide. Dental hygiene. So the dental hygiene clinic is a clinic that's run like a small business. It's run like a clinic outside of the college, but it gives our students that practice. They get to work with actual patients and do the work they're learning in class right there in that clinic. And similar to the classic room restaurant, the staff serving the dental hygiene clinic had been charged to the college's operational general fund for a number of years. And in 2018, those staff charges started being charged directly to the enterprise fund. So that's why you see in 18-19, they're breaking even and their net income is a little less. They are now covering their own staff costs as well, starting in that year 2018. Next slide. Student accident insurance. So this enterprise fund is designed specifically to break exactly even. The revenue is the student accident insurance premium paid by the student to us. We pay the insurance company. It is designed to be a pass-through only. So in 2013-14, you see that loss. It looks like a large bar. It's $2,190. But in 2012-13, the year before this graph begins, we had a revenue of $2,190. That was only a timing difference from one year to the next. It should have been deferred revenue in 2013, and that did not hit the fiscal year. So all you're seeing there is not truly a loss. It is a timing difference. The $321 in 2016, we suspect that is also just a timing difference that occurred when premiums were being collected and there was a rate change. But this one is designed to always break even. We don't intend to ever make income on this one. We simply pass the dollars through from the students to the insurance company. Next slide. Style and Class Salon. So this one, the staff has always been charged to the Style and Class Salon in the enterprise fund. So that's not one where the college has paid for staffing or gotten it started. It's doing well, and the small amount of revenue is held in the Style and Class Salon to help the esthetician part of the salon get started. So now as we move forward, this salon includes the esthetician salon or the esthetician lab as well in their activity. Next slide. So next we have the Child Development Center. Now the Child Development Center has consistently incurred losses for many years. These losses are in spite of a lot of effort to reduce costs, a lot of effort to try and make those revenues equal those expenditures. There are significant dollars of support that the Child Development Center receives from the student government, from the WCTC Foundation, and from community donations as well. And this loss is happening in spite of even receiving those donations. So a lot has been done to try to make the Child Development Center break even over the years. Structurally, the WCTC salaries and benefits are just higher than most typical community childcare centers. And that makes breaking even very, very difficult. Structurally, I think it's just close to impossible to have that perfect year where revenue will equal expenses. So if you go to the next slide, I've got just a picture. It's just a snapshot in time from last spring of 2020 of what the Child Development Center looks like. At last spring, we served 11 children of students, 10 children of staff, and 49 children from the community. One thing to note is that when working to reduce losses and increase revenue, that the students' part-time childcare needs really work contrary to that. The students have a sporadic need for childcare, yet the childcare center needs that commitment to full-time revenue. So in trying to balance that, we have a little more community children in the space than we do students. And we serve all three areas. The Child Development Center also serves our instructional programs as a practicum site. So it serves a role where our students from, for example, our early childhood education program come into the Child Development Center and get some practicum experience in that space. So it really serves two different roles that way. Next slide. So in light of these ongoing losses, we really, and the fact that the bookstore model can't support, the bookstore can make enough to support itself, but it can't make enough to support itself and the Child Development Center and the firing range. So we do need to take some sort of action to work to cut down on these losses. So we're bringing to you tonight these three options. The first option is similar to the Classic Room Restaurant and the Dental Hygiene Clinic, where we would charge some of the staffing costs to the college's operational general fund. The second option is to establish a transition team that would work on finding a community child care center interested in running their operations on our campus by leasing space from us, and we would just become landlords. The third option would be investigating the discontinuance of offering child care on campus. Next slide. Our recommendation tonight to the board is option one, the value of the Child Development Center, not only to our students who have children there, our staff who have children there, and the child care needs in our community is so important. Add to that the fact that we're a practicum site for several of our programs. The Child Development Center really has a strong role on this campus. And in light of that, we are suggesting that some of the general fund operational dollars be allocated to support some staff at the Child Development Center. Now, I have next on my slides to talk through the firing range, and then we can talk about, or you can have your discussion on what direction you'd like to provide, or we could stop at this point and we could talk about the Child Development Center and then go into the firing range. I don't know if you have a preference, David, of how I proceed.
I think that the value of going through the firing range is because there is some interdependency on one and the other. So
Perfect. I'll keep going.
We can talk when we can.
Okay, I'll keep going. So the firing range has also recorded losses for many years, and their losses have been significantly more than the Child Development Center. In recent years, we've made staffing reductions and we've reduced hours of operations, and the staff in charge of the firing range have worked very hard to try to eliminate this net loss and get to a break even. Again, structurally, there are reasons why we just aren't going to be able to get there. And with the firing range, as I understand it, and the dean and associate dean are on Zoom, so we can get their input if you want. But in my conversations with them and with Brad, we aren't selling guns or ammunition. And a lot of firing ranges, as I understand it, that's where they make their margins, are in those retail sales, and that's not something we can do. So this enterprise fund is only the public use of the firing range. So I'll explain what that means. If you go to the next slide, the revenue that we take into the firing range is membership do pay membership fees and it's range fees for when the public uses the range. We have approximately, or had approximately 2,100 members as of the closing of the firing range to the public last March. And just so you know, we have not reopened the firing range to the public since March because of COVID and the difficulties in managing social distancing in the range. So we have not reopened to the public. We've been closed to them since March. But prior to that, those 21 members were visiting the range approximately 3 times per year. So the visits to the range weren't enough to provide the revenue it took to cover the costs and the staffing for the range. The next slide details the costs. So we have staffing costs. Reductions have been made in attempts to bring the loss down. We have some lead remediation. Some of the equipment maintenance is borne by the enterprise fund. And we have a special insurance policy that we're required to keep for the public use of the range. And those are all the costs that run through this enterprise fund. Next slide. So similar to the Child Development Center, we're bringing to you 3 options. And the first option is to build an indoor firing range on our own Pewaukee campus. We currently lease the range that we use. We do not own it. This would bring ownership to the college and provide some operational savings in our operational budget as well. The second option is that we may be able to renegotiate another long-term lease with the current facility, but this isn't a much more expensive option. And the third option is to explore a new lease with a different community firing range. Our fear with that would be that we may not be able to continue to serve our law enforcement departments as we have been. So the next slide is our recommendation, which again is option number 1, building an indoor firing range on the Pewaukee campus. This option saves considerable operational dollars by discontinuing the lease of the current firing range. Currently, in fiscal year 1920, the firing range annual operational costs are close to $220,000 per year. The proposed V building that you heard about at the October board meeting would include the firing range, and there are anticipated annual operating costs of only $52,000 for that building. So the annual projected operational savings is around $168,000 per year. Looking at the cost of building the building, we've estimated a return on that investment or a payback of a little less than 9 years. The new range would serve all of our instructional programs, our students who need firing and gun training, and it would meet the needs of, we'd still be able to meet the needs of law enforcement departments, what they need for their training, and they could use the facility. What it would not include is the public membership. So the part that would not be available in owning our own range is the public paying membership fees and renting range space. Next slide. So today's request is because of the years of losses and the inability to cover those losses with bookstore and other enterprise funds, we're asking tonight if you could give us some consensus on which direction you'd like the college to go for the Child Development Center and for the firing range. And we're also here to answer questions. So we've got, like I said before, we've got Brad here in the room, the Vice President of Instruction. We've got the Dean over these areas and the Associate Deans, and we can answer questions if you have them.
Could you just go over the financial numbers of the firing range again? I don't see them listed here, so I need to look at that.
The graph, if you go back to the graph for the firing range, Kristen, it's back just a couple slides, the blue bars. Yes, that shows the net losses. Oh, building the new one. You're right, it's not on there. You're right. I just added it in my notes this morning. Yes, I'll go over that, and you will, it's part of the presentation at the November board meeting, when we bring the building back. So that's where we had prepared the numbers for that, and I thought, boy, it really fits into this presentation too. So my apologies. So the current leased building, the operating costs are approximately $220,000 a year. The proposed V building, we're calling it V as in Victor, firing range, the anticipated annual operating costs are closer to $52,000 per year for an annual projected operational budget savings of about $168,000 per year. So looking at the estimated cost of building that building, we are looking at a payback of less than 9 years. The savings are in the lease. The savings are in the equipment maintenance. We will have upgraded equipment. The equipment in the leased firing range right now is 10 years old and needs updating. We will have less lead remediation costs and less maintenance costs. And with that leased building, not only do we pay the lease, but we pay the property taxes on that building. We pay for snow removal around that building. And those things, we don't pay property taxes, we're property tax exempt, so we won't have to pay that on our own building. We wouldn't have additional snow removal other than the sidewalks and the approaches up to the building from our other buildings, so it's significantly less that way too. Those are the savings that we would realize. I can see another question on the tip of your tongue.
So the savings is really in the reduction of the lease, not in the reduction of net loss or the related. Is there a cash flow positive on building a P?
The loss would, the enterprise fund is strictly the activity of the public paying membership dues and paying for range fees for using it. When we own our own building on the Pewaukee campus, we will no longer be open to the public. So those losses will be gone, the revenue will be gone as well, but the expenses associated with that activity will also be gone. And we won't continue that activity. So our building would serve our students, our instructional programs, and it would serve the law enforcement agencies that rent our facility, use our facility for training. It wouldn't be an enterprise fund anymore. So it would be like any other lab that supports our instruction. So there wouldn't be a cash flow, but there wouldn't need to be, because there wouldn't be those related expenses that have to be covered either. It would no longer be an enterprise fund. There you go. I should have said that up front. Thank you, Tom, for getting me there.
Gene, maybe, over there too. Maybe touch base on, the challenge around, in absence of building a new range, the practicality of somebody paying a membership to more market equivalent, and why that probably isn't practical if somebody's going to do it.
Great question. That is something that we talked about quite a bit, is could we raise membership fees and range fees high enough so that we don't have these losses anymore? But to be honest, our range, the hours that it's open to the public is very limited, because we have instruction going on in there and we have law enforcement agencies using the range. So we aren't apples to apples comparable to other indoor ranges, because they have full hours available to their members and we have very limited and restricted hours. So we do not believe our members would pay more in a membership fee because of that being a big part of it, that they don't have the opportunity that they have in other ranges.
If I can add something to that, again, remember, we cannot sell firearms and ammunition. So if you go to Fletcher's, their primary thing is to sell firearms. And by the way, we have a range over there if you want to go shoot. We would have to have our members come here and shoot very regularly. And if the average is 3 times per year, you need to increase those rates through the roof to even come close. So like having a restaurant without a bar. All the margin comes from the bar, not from the food. So we have the range without the firearms, which we just can't do.
It literally is some business proposition, and you still have access to the service in a data facility. So why would anybody pay market rate?
It's a beautiful facility, but we're never going to be in a scenario to turn positive with public membership.
Thanks, Brad.
This is Michael Wiebe. I have some concerns. I think when we closed the firing range due to COVID, there was some public backlash. And that's my concern here, not involving them enough or at all to come to some kind of decision and having bad publicity. So my thinking is some kind of forum with a key stakeholder, and that's the public. I have friends that use that, and I have feedback. You know, they were upset it was closed, and they like to go there. But you guys know better how popular it is. But I think to have negative backlash from closing it to COVID, and then all of a sudden closing it for good, and then if it comes out that the new range that we're building has an ROI of 8 years, and that's in my world, that's a long time, and not consulting the public and really coming to a joint conclusion that, well, you know, we could raise the fees ×3, but would the existing members, you know, do a survey? Maybe would the existing members still go then, or could we get some kind of commitments so that the public has a stake in the decision, and we reduce the risk of bad publicity?
Michael, I would tend to agree with you, except for the fact that there's other gun ranges available to the public. Do you think I need that?
Just in case.
I bet they could hear me outside that door. Okay.
Michael, I tend to agree with you, but because we have Fletcher's and other shooting ranges available, I don't see this as similar to the personal enrichment courses that we had a difficult decision to make on. To me, if the public sees this type of revenue loss, I think they're going to hang us and throw us in the pond, because this is a losing venture. And we certainly could get the public involved and receive their feedback, but I don't know if it's going to change my decision.
Yes.
And maybe the decision is the only option one, but somehow to have a key stakeholder not surprised, you know, that is my concern.
If I can add one thing as well, so the Goff family is who we lease that property from, as you may or may not know, but so Jeff and I had talked to the Goffs to let them know that we were thinking about building a range, and because our lease was coming closer to being due. And so they're very prudent entrepreneurs and business people. So they've been exploring their options as well. And I know that Bob Rosh is on the Zoom, and he can probably give more information if we need it, but there are other ranges interested in taking that space and possibly buying that space from the Goff family and keeping it as a range. And we would be able to turn over, if that happens, a membership list should they want that. Nothing's guaranteed, but that those conversations are starting to happen as they're waiting to see what we're doing as well.
Good point. Thank you.
And as far as the ROI, I do want to make one more point to Michael's comment about the ROI. That is only accounting for the savings in the operating budget. So that is not counting these large losses you see on the firing range graph on page 14 of the presentation. That's not counting those. And like I said before, those have been covered in the past with net income from our bookstore. And our bookstore just doesn't make enough margin to cover these large losses anymore. So that's a large part of this kind of how this conversation got this far, was started with that.
And Jane, you also mentioned you can't use operational funds and move them into enterprise to cover the losses.
Right, the losses in the firing range, we've already adjusted the staffing and the hours of the range. So there isn't room to move the staff off of the firing range to help it break even. It still won't break even. So it just isn't enough.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
I appreciate your perspective.
I think that, you've got, and why I suggested that.
I suggested that we kind of look at these things in tandem, because one, it does depend on the other in terms of how much can be supported. There's $112,000 worth of loss between the two programs and a conservative estimate. And it's nothing on the horizon that would suggest that that would get better. So it's just one of those things that when you think about even trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, it becomes difficult to get the math to work, right? And I think that's the challenge that we have there in thinking about it. So.
I would add that we have the leadership on the Zoom who are part of these two enterprise funds, and they have worked very hard in the last several years to get these enterprise funds to break even. These losses haven't occurred for lack of trying. And they really have worked, and they've implemented changes, and they have come up with bright ideas, and they have just worked hard to try to bring these down, and they have brought the losses down. We did see a difference, but there are structurally some things happening in these two enterprise funds that kind of just prevent them from getting to that break-even point.
Joe Garza here. My suggestion would be, personally as a board member, I can't even at this time provide my recommendation towards any sort of consensus. I think back of when we eliminated some of the other programs, and I apologize, I know these are enterprise fund programs, but then we eliminated some of those other ones. And we actually had a process in place where, whether we liked it or not, similar to Michael's point, and I'm not necessarily suggesting a survey, I'm not necessarily suggesting sitting down at a table with constituents, but rather just an opportunity for them to know that this is being considered. And I'd like to, at least have some more time to learn why the other, and not that I don't trust the administrative team that they haven't vetted it, but I would like to find out more of why those other options weren't as popular. And then, help me better understand why the recommendations are being made. And I don't think we're going to have time to do that tonight. And then it would also allow an opportunity for, I don't know if Andy would, post something publicly or whatever that we're considering these changes, and that maybe we'll take at least another board meeting or two to come to that decision. Because to me, it just seems like if we're developing a consensus, I know consensus is not a formal motion or approval, it almost seems like it's already kind of said and done. And I would prefer the opportunity to, continue this conversation at least the next board meeting or two, so that we can hear a little bit more about the rationale. Again, not to say that I wouldn't support it. And then further to allow for that public comment to be heard as well. So David, I'm not sure if that's where everybody's at, but that's kind of where I'm at, and certainly open to hear where others are as well.
I agree, Joe. I have a lot of questions with the Child Development Center, and have we looked at other sites that we could rent out, and has all of that legwork been done? And it would really give us a choice to look between option 1 and option 2. To me, I don't think option 2 has been explored enough, nor do I know enough about the program. You know, what areas utilize that? Is it strictly for child development? You know, we're training individuals for jobs in that area that don't even pay a living wage. So, you know, I want to hear what our other options are and what they would look like before I'm able to make a decision.
I'd like to clarify just 2 things in those 2 comments. Katie, the Child Development Center is owned by us, so it is on our campus in this building where we're sitting today, just a little bit on the other side of the building, but it is owned by us and run by us. So option number 2 in the slides for the Child Development Center would be an option where we do not provide that service anymore, but we would rent our space to someone else to provide it if we could find that someone else. So that would be, it's not us looking for another place to provide our service. We would stop providing that service in option number 2. And based on the use of our Child Development Center by so many of our instructional programs for our students to get their practicum, it creates that another element of complexity if we were no longer to provide that service. And Joe, I wanted to just respond on the firing range. That the option 1 is our ownership of a building that includes the firing range. Options 2 and 3 are us renting that space. So over a 10-year lease, we paid over $1 million for that lease space. And now we are approaching the end of our lease and we will need to vacate that property, and we don't have anything to show for our $1 million worth of rental payments. Not to mention the operational costs of maintaining that building and that space for our students. So it's similar in my mind to that analysis that you make of, should I rent an apartment for my family for the next 10 years or rent a home, or should I own my home for the next 10 years? The difference is when we rented that home, we took on the operational costs of all of it. So we didn't call the super when the furnace went out, we replaced the furnace. And we didn't call the super when we needed snow removal, we provided that snow removal. So that's, in my mind, kind of the comparison of option 1 versus options 2 and 3 with the firing range. It's rent versus own, and there's significant operational savings in owning.
And I understand that. And again, I was just iterating the point that, you know, just procedurally, you know, stretching this out a little bit. Again, not that I agree nor disagree. I'm just looking for 2 things: more information, and then secondly, extending the process.
I understand. And that V building is on the November 10th board agenda for approval to construct that building and approval to go forward with it. So it is already on the agenda for your next meeting.
Yeah, I think that, Joe, or team, the
Opportunity to extend the discussion is absolutely not the problem. If we were going to try to open up any kind of public forum, I think that's going to create, you know, a little bit different set of circumstances around logistics. But if that's what we think we need to do, then we should have that discussion tonight. Otherwise, I think moving, you know, with some additional support and some additional numbers maybe framed up will help us.
Yes, and for me, I wasn't necessarily looking for a forum or a survey. I just want the public to know that we're having this conversation and that the appropriate place would be, you know, privilege of the floor or whatever it is that we, or comments from the public at our board meetings, just so that we don't have to overcomplicate the process and just stick within our processes.
Sure.
I agree with Joe, to somehow give the notice to the public that these ideas, these decisions are pending, and it's not a complete surprise and then a potential backlash. And maybe that's an interview, the college does an interview with the newspaper. I don't know what, like Joe, but somehow to extend the process a little bit, because time seems to heal all wounds if there are wounds. And if it's really rushed through, or the perception could be that it's rushed through, that could come back to hurt us.
Jay, does the membership have a officer, president, director?
I don't know the answer to that. But I'm going to bring the microphone to Brad because Bob Rosh is on the Zoom. He has answers to some of that. And we do have a communication plan where we're going to communicate out to those members as well.
So one thing to keep in mind, and then Bob, I'm going to throw it over to you if that's okay. We are not going to be open to the public for the entire spring semester as well, because we're keeping our campus pretty much closed to the public. So we're going to have a year, well, almost a year time period where we're going to remain closed because of all the same challenges that we would have encountered or have been encountering now. So our hope was to be able to send out a communication that says we're still closed due to COVID, and we are building our own facility that will be worth much higher than that, which you get kind of what we're doing. So how we go about doing that, I think is going to be a combination of working with Andy and others to get that message out. These are all just internal discussions. Obviously, we haven't done any of that yet, other than say we're still closed, potentially we're closed to the public for COVID. So I don't know, Bob, if you can respond to the question about kind of the membership. My understanding is it's just a general membership. There's no like club type of setup with that.
Just trying to think if there's somebody, a party that can be talked to.
So Bob, can you answer that, please?
Sure. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the firing range, and obviously for all your support over the years, because it's a very valuable resource to all of our training needs at the college, as well as the agencies that rent from us. So if you have any questions, I'm not sure. We don't have, if your question is if we have like a board of directors or something like that, that is not the case. It's strictly public members can apply to be a member. Their membership's good for a year, and then they pay as they come. And I think to answer Michael's question a little bit, when we closed in August, Brad had crafted a letter that we shared out with probably close to 6,000 emails that we had in the system. And part of that letter offered membership refunds, prorated, of course, for anybody that wanted that. And out of the 2,100 active paid members, we've only given out about 96 refunds. So it's not a barnstorm. I think a lot of our members that use the range very regularly, they've moved on because we do have competition, obviously, between the one in Waukesha and there's one in Brookfield as well. And now Richfield has one. So, and like was kind of mentioned, their business models are a little bit different because they're open more days of the week to the public. I don't know. I know at least the one in Waukesha doesn't staff the same level that we do. We always have a safety officer on the range all the time when people are shooting. And then somebody basically covering the check-in process and stuff like that. Some of these other facilities don't do that. They don't have anybody on the range, so they cut down on their staff hours or amount of time that they have to staff somebody there. So, and even when we sent out that letter that Brad had crafted, I was the point person. I got very few feedback other than just to ask a question and, comment about, we hope you reopen kind of thing. But nothing really negative. I had a couple, tried to just explain, why we're doing it, but not a groundswell of problems, I would say. And I know that you're discussing this V building, and there's a lot of positives to making that change, which has been explained already. So, but we've also learned over the last 7 years in this facility that there's things that we wouldn't repeat primarily as equipment needs in a new facility that we have in this one. And so when we design the V building and put things in place, we're taking those things into account as well. So it's not set up. I mean, even if you extended keeping this facility open to the public, the current one, the new facility is not designed for that. It's clearly strictly designed for law enforcement. Otherwise, we'd have to spend probably upwards of $300,000 more just on certain equipment to make it usable for the public versus law enforcement. I know it's a long answer. I apologize for that. So, but I wanted to give you some background on the things that we've thought about and we've worked through with Greg and Jody and Brad and kind of work these things through. And really, to speak on behalf of the membership, it's pretty much plateaued. When we opened up, the membership fee was $40 a year, and literally we had hardly anybody sign up. It was dropped to $10 a year, and it went to thousands of people signed up. It was amazing. And it had been at $10 a year for probably about 4 or 5 years. We upped it to $20 a year a couple of years ago. Nobody really balked at it, but knowing a lot of our members, many of them are retired, and they come in literally with exact change and to buy one target. So they got exactly $1.09 because that's what their allowance was or whatever. And they're great people. But like Ken was pointed out, if we have 2,100 members, not all of them are coming 3 times a year. At a minimum, if they would, that we wouldn't even make our budget. They'd have to almost double or triple that to even make our budget. And so the membership level is plateaued because we have competition close by. And obviously our hours are a little bit different. We had to do some cost savings, but our primary mission, it has been since day one, is to have the facility for law enforcement training primarily with the public option, and basically if it's sustainable. And we've done everything we can to make it sustainable, and we just don't get the foot traffic to support that. So long story short, that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this piece of it? Can we shift gears just for a second on the childcare?
Yes.
Stand by me.
I know, we could stand by.
On the childcare, what type of increase would they be facing when we talk about getting it up to market rate? Do you have a sense on that?
Yes, so we've started with this year, there was an increase this year to attempt to get closer to market rates. So Angie Todd is on the Zoom meeting. Angie, I'd like you to be able to speak to our family rates and the market rate and how much we definitely are looking at increasing to get to that. So Angie, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you. So we have been doing a 3% increase for the past 5 to 6 fiscal years. When we did a recent market study, it was clear that we were significantly under market value by 15 to 20%. If we did a 5% increase for the next 3 fiscal years, that would bring us at closer to what the current market rate is.
Thanks, Angie. And the other question I had is that it looks like it's about a 6 student to 1 ratio to staff, if I'm understanding that correct. Is that comparable to what other programs in the area have in terms of child to caregiver?
So we do follow the DCF regulations for how many children per staff we can have in a classroom. One of the other things to make note of is our group sizes are contingent on the square footage of each classroom. So a group size could potentially be larger, but based on our classroom size, per square footage, we have to follow a specific ratio for that.
Another point that I would just another statutory point. The state board does require that when we are operating services like this, that we do not offer below market, so that we're not unfairly competing with private businesses out there as a tax supported entity.
So we're in violation of it.
Technically, we have been in violation of it.
And we would want to make the effort to get up to the market rate. And I'll say, you know, like our experience with the Classic Room Restaurant and our experience with the dental hygiene clinic, we can support some of the staff dollars with operational dollars now, hoping that or knowing that as we get closer to market rate, perhaps more of those could go back over into the enterprise fund. A decision like this isn't a forever. Now we have to do that forever, but it can help us break even while we're getting the families up to a market rate, and perhaps then there could be less burden on the general fund in the future. Time will tell on that as we do the financials and calculate the numbers, but that's not out of the question.
Well, I think, you know, one of the thoughts around looking at them both together was just the perspective on that. So listening to Bob, you know, it's one thing to try to go 5% to 7% a year and work off of 15 to 20% under pricing. It's another thing to think a member is going to pay triple. And just, what does that mean?
Julie's got a question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this graph about the children served. So these are students that are having their children in the daycare while they're getting their education?
Yes, the graph shows, and this is, well, I don't have a page number, sorry. The graph shows that there were 11 children of WCTC students in the child care center being served in the child care center. There are 10 children of staff members and 49 of community. So yes.
Okay, and yep, thank you. And I guess what comes to my mind, just looking at it, I guess I also think of this as an equity piece. I don't know what that means for students, if to be able to have the option to have childcare, to be able to attend class. And then also if we're increasing the rate, if there's students needing education, but also childcare, the market rate might be prohibited. Market rate is prohibitive in childcare. It's an issue in our society right now anyways. Is there something that can be done to assist students in that, or is that already part of that?
That's a great question. And we do, I will say that we have talked about the fact that having childcare available for our students' children is an equity issue and an issue with them being able to save.
Can I offer one thing regarding that? We do currently provide WCTC student families a 15% tuition discount. That's one of the reasons the student government provides us support, financial support, is to be able to provide that 15% tuition discount, as well as waiving all of our fees for our students.
So students don't pay the same as staff or community for their children.
Yeah. Students pay a lesser amount than what staff and the community does when they're at market rate.
Even for market rate, we can provide that discount. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Angie.
If we were to move to allowing a different entity to run that space, would we have to discontinue the student support?
Not necessarily. It would be, we would look for a partner who would allow that to happen, allow us to, and work with us on allowing our students to come in for practicum. So the key would be finding a community childcare center willing to work with us at that level and able to work with us at that level. I would not say it's out of the question, no.
And any insight as to what the revenue generated would be to allowing that space to be utilized by an outside childcare center?
We haven't done an analysis of the market rate of that space and what a rental fee may be.
but it would be revenue coming into the college that is not coming in today. I don't know, Jeff, you wouldn't have a feel for something like that? No, not without doing some analysis. So we haven't done that analysis to say what we could rent that space for. No, good question, okay.
Just curious, one follow-up on my point. Is if there's only 11 children that are from students, do you have a sense of if that's meeting the need currently? Or are there other students that might have a similar need?
Students have to be served first before staff or community. So if there's a student need, they come first. That's the prioritization.
I might, Jane, be able to offer some additional information on that question if you like.
Go ahead, Joan.
So that's a great question. And I think one of the things, there isn't, certainly we want to serve as many students as we can. And I know Jane alluded a little earlier in the presentation about some of the challenges that poses for us. So students are running on very part-time schedules, which are not typically lend themselves towards profitability. So we're always trying to balance serving students with having a number of full-time, which are typically more community members or staff, faculty and staff, so that we can kind of balance those two things as well. But I also don't want to neglect to mention that we serve students in the Child Development Center not only through their use of the Center for Childcare, but we have about 250 students across 6 different programs that actually train down in the Child Development Center every year. So we're a nationally accredited childcare center. So those students are in early childhood education. They're within our preschool technical diploma, our Foundations of Teacher Education program, but also our paramedic technician, fire protection technician, nursing students, and dental and hygiene students all do some sort of training down in the Child Development Center. Many of those are practicum training hours, clinical rotations, things like that. In early childhood alone, our students do about 1,200 hours annually training in the Child Development Center. And we do use community placement sites in addition to that. So they're doing about 13,500 hours in community placement sites. I think another thing just that the board may want to be aware of or keep in mind is that Waukesha County pre-COVID-19 has been designated as a childcare desert. So that essentially just means there's not enough inventory or supply of childcare to meet the workforce demands in our county. So in the regions immediately to the northwest and south of our campus, that's a childcare desert right now. As a matter of fact, about the only places in Waukesha County where there isn't a desert is within the city itself and within Brookfield. And so in Waukesha, there's 207 regulated childcare centers, and only about 78 of those are available to us for placement sites for students. And that's mostly because of quality related issues. So the remainder of those sites are either very, very low quality, they have significant licensing violations, or in some cases, they're just not accessible to us because they might be third shift childcare. We can't put a student into third shift childcare because kids are sleeping. So they can't work on their skills, practice their skills in that kind of a setting. And then I think there's the impact of COVID. So if you've been kind of monitoring the media and the news, childcare centers are about 25% they anticipate statewide within our county have permanently closed. So we were a desert already before COVID, and now we have 25% less care in Waukesha County. So I think there's a big community impact too. That for us, if we can find a way to keep this center operational, I think it serves our students so heavily
But it also serves our community at a really, really critical time right now.
Thank you, Joan. So we can maybe wrap this up because we are on a time thing
We're
here.
over time. Is there anything that the board would like from us? I don't know at what point you are to giving direction. It's two different directions, one for the childcare, one for the firing range. If you're ready to do that, or if you need information or anything further.
So
I think it would be helpful to know the revenue that could be generated from renting out this childcare space. I think Joan's points were great, but if we can find another provider to move in that space, we're not losing the money and we're still offering the services. I'd also like to know what the total capacity is for that space in terms of students, and if there's been times in which we've met that capacity.
Okay, I've got that. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, so given our time, then I think, procedurally, we weren't looking for vote on this. It was introduced to the group. There's a lot to be digested. We have 8 enterprise accounts, 2 of them are struggling. We have to give consideration, to the sustainability of all of them. With that said, we do have this on as an agenda item for November. So we'll clean that up and make sure that there's a proper amount of time to discuss it. Gene, we can circle back a little bit and make sure we're touching base on some notes on what we're looking for from the board's perspective. I would ask the board that you digest this and give this good thought so that we can act one way or the other through consensus at the November meeting. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. With that said, we are at 7:47. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move down, Carter.
Brian Baumgart, second. We'll call a roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Lancaster,
Aye.
Alan Parch,
Aye.
Tom Halsky,
Aye.
David Lana, I got third. Julie Valdez, Joe Garza,
Aye.
Brian Baumgartner,
Aye.
Weeb,
Aye.
Bauer. Aye. Katie Cancel.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our presenters, and have a good evening. Drive safe.
Good night.
Night.